Hey everybody, Brad Linder back at you again with another card of the day. And I'm going to share this over with the page real quick. And we're going to get right into this. So I want to make sure it's live so it shows up on the channel. So we have Contact. Cool deal. All right. Now, as you guys can see, we have Loki. Hey, Noel. Glad you made it, buddy. I'm going to be starting out on this one a little different than I normally do. I'm going to go right in here with the pencils on this one. I wanted to do something a little different today with the fundamentals of this one and the medium as well. And just kind of come in to make this one clean and bright because these lines are so crystal clear for one of my sketch cards. I'm very pleased with it. And I wanted to do something that was a little more vibrant than just the typical markers, because sometimes, give or take, they do work, but I like to shake things up, and sometimes I like them to be a little lighter than just doing the same thing over and over and over. And I like using different mediums so that they show up in different ways. But particularly for this card, this is probably the closest that I've done to a Disney Marvel type of character in this set. And this is one of those things where I just really want it to be bright and vibrant, like animation, more than more of a cartoony type of feel rather than just typical comic sketch card type stuff. So that was the reason I brought this out this way. And I like to see how this plays out just as well as you guys do in the way that this thing transforms and comes to life. And I've been asked to do a lot more of the that's going to be edge of hair, so I don't want to turn that green. But I've been asked to do a lot more of the comic-based stuff that I started out with in the beginning and less of the animated stuff. So I've been trying to get more into that, away from some of the cartoony stuff that I've been doing, like the Thundercats and whatnot, which I've mentioned before, so I won't go through again. But I'm going to base this out in this green and yellow, so it's going to be very simple, but yet hopefully very bright and clean, because I'm having a blast with this one. This is the same kind of work that I use for the Night of the Living Dead book and for my character Lone Rider, which is a steampunk, cyberpunk type of comic book. It's a future-based Western, and it has a lot of hodgepodge mix of old school Earth Western stuff versus cyberpunk mechanics, and then you have it's a mix of cyberpunk, future punk, and steampunk. So it's one of those books that's just really going to come off the page, and I've been having a blast doing it. And since I took that stuff over and started doing Night as well as Lone Rider itself, man, I've gotten a lot more into these pencils and gotten away from a lot of the digital coloring and the markers because of the fact that I really dig it, but I've been trying to get different mediums to make different comics look unique. And I like the vintage look that the pencil gives over the digital stuff. I don't get me wrong, I like digital comics, I like digital coloring and stuff like that. But what I'm saying is that I like to use different mediums because of the fact that it gives it different textures and gives it a nostalgic feel to comics that I grew up with. And a lot of the characters that I like get that kind of vibe from that. So I'm doing good, Noel. Thanks for asking, man. I appreciate it. I'm doing really good today. Been hammering stuff out, man. So, got everything going on and getting stuff ready and getting sites back up and all that good stuff, and getting comics loaded into them so that you guys can see it, and going from there. But it's just one of those things, man. I really get like I said, I get a hardcore nostalgic feel for comics these days because everything is so liquid with the digital stuff. it's getting abused, by lesser and less quality talent because of the internet, which is an advantage to everybody to be able to use it as well. But in most cases, though, um, with that freedom comes a natural washout of not so talented people. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anybody particular, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm saying you should raise your quality standards to meet whatever is out there. And if you say, well, I want to do a comic book, well, you should at least do it at the standards of what the companies that are out there as your competition are doing. You know what I mean? I mean, don't just throw down some kind of CGI thing, or let a program build it for you or whatever, and then say you're drawing comics, because you're not. You know what I mean? I mean, there are CGI programs out there that'll make drawings for you, and you can configure the pieces and make images and stuff. But you shouldn't do that, because that's not drawing, that's modeling. And there's a difference in coming out and literally drawing the pictures versus using a modeling type program to do that for you, and then saying you're drawing the pictures when you're not. You know what I mean? So, hold a standard to your comic so that it's a professional level at least. And professional, what is considered professional versus artistic medium and take? Now, there's a fine line there into that arena, and when you come up head to head on it, art is relative. So I'm not saying don't do it as a medium. I'm just saying be responsible and put out a decent book. You know what I mean? Don't put out just crap to put out crap. And I see people doing that, all the time. And it's just, if you can't draw, don't put out there, don't put it out there that you want to do comic books when you aren't ready to do comics yet as an artist. Get yourself an artist and hire them and get a good talent to get on there and help you out and make that happen. I see so many people all the time coming in and just saying, well, I want to do a comic book. And then they come in and do it, and it's not even remotely close to comic book standards of, at least independent and small press. I mean, come in at least at that level. But I mean, if you're doing it as a style thing, like I said, art is relative. So if you're doing it as a style choice, and you're making a statement with that kind of style, then that's your thing. And I said go for it. But if you're doing it just because you can't draw, wait until you can get an artist to work with and build it up. You know what I mean? Or build up your skills at least to a semi-professional level to where you can hang with it. I see that so often, to where people go, well, I'm just going to draw a comic because I can make it online through this, this game figure generator or whatever. And I'll see all these horrible CGI things all the time. And I tell, students that I work with, please, please, please do the due diligence and do the work. If you're going to be an artist and you're going to call yourself an artist, get out there and do the work and get it done. Don't just use a CGI compression software to knock it out for you and then say you're doing comics, because you're not. You know what I mean? I see that all the time. And it's a horrible, horrible thing, because it's filling the industry with crap. And not that your story or concept is bad. It's if the story and concept don't match up with the level of the artwork being put to it, the artwork will drag the whole thing down, and it'll get into a hodgepodge of just a mess. You know what I mean? But like I said, if you're doing it style-wise for a purpose, more power to you. I say go for it. But if you're doing it for just kicking it out there on the sake of kicking it out there, you're wasting your time, and you're wasting your reader and following's time, and you're doing damage to your rep by doing that. So don't stick crap out there. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just where it's at, plain and simple. Don't stick junk out there, because it's going to make you look bad, and they're going to be like, well, that's the work history we have to go by. So that's what people tend to look at. And as a fellow artist, I don't want you guys to have to suffer that way. You know what I mean? So if you're going to do it, get it out there and get it done, but be very cautious and careful about that. So now I'm going with the traditional Loki brown eyes here, because normally It depends on who draws him. Some people give him green eyes, some people give him brown eyes. I give him brown eyes, so if you disagree with that, that's okay. But for me personally, I give him brown eyes. So, but as far as this goes, though, be sure and like I said, do the work and make sure it happens so that you can put out a decent product. Um, I like messing with mediums and stuff like this, and I like doing different things, but you know, I don't. I'm not going to go off and paint something just because of the fact that I can. So I don't like doing that, and I'm not gonna. I'm not a professional painter. I'm a hobby painter, and I would rather not put out my work as a hobby painter to say that I'm a painter. Just to get paintings out there. I mean, if I was going to take it professional or something and learn the craft and do it hardcore day in day out like I do my artwork on my comic stuff, that's a totally different picture and a totally different subject matter. You know, not just as a medium, but as an artistic direction on the whole. So make sure you do it from where you're at with making sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be before you go off and get tied up into that. I see so many people crushing it with good talent stuff. And then I see these guys coming out with, hey man, I made a comic and it looks like a kindergartner, scrapped it. And no offense to the kindergartners, but that's just one of those things, man. You got to step up and do what you got to do, and you got to put in the work. So stop cutting corners, stop putting out inferior work, and start kicking this stuff out the way you should. I had to do that a while back too because I wanted to rush things, and I knew I wasn't ready, but I had to do comics here and there in place because of the fact that I had to make sure that would work. And a lot of people make that mistake. I recommend that you don't make that mistake. So I'm going to go really light with this blue here, old school comic style. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this over with a gray, but I want it to have a blue tinge to it. So I'm going to color this with a blue like this, make the hair blue, and because he has jet black hair, even though in the films they have him with brown hair or whatever. I like to still do the traditional jet black because to me that's Loki. So that's what I like to do with it. But get that done, get your work in, draw every day, produce, and get it out there. You know what I mean? So don't let me discourage you, though, because I'm not trying to at all. Now that I've got this in, I'm going to go back and work on something with this. This yellow here. I'm going to put in these gold kind of features. So by putting in this sandy gold type of color, it's going to allow this really cool metallic look to come across. This is one of my favorite things to do with this kind of stuff. Okay. Give it a natural metallic feel. And when you go a little more brown than you do, a dark yellow or an orange, which I'm going to add an orange highlight in here to soften it up a little bit. But I like to use this golden brown because what comes in off of this gold is it gives it more of a metallic look, even though that it's, two-dimensional flat coloring. I just really, really dig the effect. So we'll get a nice three-dimensional coin type of effect out of it with these discs. And then right here in the helmet, put some of that in there right there towards that center line. Put some right there to elevate that. A little bit there. You don't want to overwork this, so I like to give it in just little sections. That way it comes up just a little bit. It gives a little texture without beating it to death. And that works really well on these for these metal type textures. Really cool stuff. Go around this edge right here. Liven that up a little bit. Now on the chromed top of this helmet, which is more bichromed, it doesn't mean necessarily metallic. It looks mirrored, polished. You give it a little bit darker shading there because of the fact of where he's standing and the angle that he's at. So by doing that, it makes it look like he's leaning forward, and this is overshadowed by the horns that are coming out of his head. And we want to do that because of the fact that we want them to look massive, and we also want those horns to come forward, and that shading makes that drop back. So we have that going on. Now that we have this going on here, before I do that orange, I'm going to grab a little bit of this brown here. And put in some tones for his skin because he's a little bit more tan. Even though, like I said, in the films, he also looks a little more, Tom looks a little more light-skinned. It's got kind of more of a milky wash going on. But in this case, I'm going to give him this tan anyway because I want him to be vibrant. And I want it to look, like I said, heavy, heavy, heavy on the animated look. So it'll look very bright, very colorful. Give him a little bit of a dip there under his eyelids and under that brow. Make his eyes look sunk in just a little bit. Color the bottom of that brow just a little. And right up underneath his helmet here, we're going to give just a little bit of color to make that look like he is underneath that. So now we have that going on. Give a little more to that neck. Block out the line here for the fabric of the neck, of that neck guard coming up. And there we go. Cool deal. Now, instead of highlighting on here, I've decided I'm going to use this orange to pop out the background. So I'm going to color this down. Making sure we get clean lines here. Very cool. Slow and steady, back and forth. Okay. Done deal. Cool. I like it. Now, I'm going to take the painstaking path of drawing a line here on this edge and coming across this way so that I can fill that in. And then go where it contacts the other line and just draw over just a little, seam it up. And now I'll come in over here, pop this edge in, no biggie. Done deal. Seal the card. Go back down this way. Boom. Okay. Now to keep this even so it doesn't look like it's colored and scribbled on, you have to go longer strokes and try to maintain the same pressure. And then you can go back over and fill it in. And the more you go over it, of course, the more it'll fill in the pores of the white. But I'm not going to saturate that because I'll use a blending pencil and grind that down with no problem. But now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same light gray that I had over here. Get this nailed. Boom. Right up under here, just a little bit for the teeth, for the shadow of the lip, shadow of the teeth, and there we go. Cool deal. Done. We have Loki. So with that one done, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am going to get out of here early so that I can get back to these because I've got 4 or 5 more laid out. And if, just in case you didn't see the War Machine yesterday, that's how it turned out. I hope you guys can see that. And I'm going to be back at it again tomorrow. So as always, you guys know we have this rock for a limited amount of time, so be sure to take care of it, make it a better place for your own experience, and then remember to leave it better for a heavier, happier vibe for the people tomorrow. Talk to you later.